Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scouts. My name is Joe and joining me is David. We're back again. This morning we discussed the news that the Premier League matches are to be postponed due to coronavirus. Game week 30 and 31 are definitely postponed. We knew that then, but we have just received an update from the FPL. They've kindly put some vital information out about what the decision will mean for fantasy managers. David, let's start with what the FPL have been saying. So yeah, what's the FPL's response?
Yeah, that's right. So we've had some information come out in the last half an hour, sort of answering a lot of the questions that fantasy managers have had regarding their teams. And largely the questions people have had, of course, have been about game week 30. But the information that has been put out obviously looks applicable for the entire period that FPL is going to be suspended for, which at the moment is until game week 32. So we should just clarify that what we were able to sort of bring you earlier was that game week 30 and 31 are still kind of going ahead. They just have no games in them. And we have, and the Premier League had made a commitment to postponing those and putting those in subsequent game weeks. That's all we had so far. We have a little bit more information now, more so on those deadlines. And the crucial thing is that those deadlines are going to stay the same. So it's kind of slight confirmation of that. So what I'm largely going to do, I'm going to work from the statement that FPL have put out. And then I will kind of, go into a little bit more detail of what that might mean for our teams. So, so they have officially said that the deadlines for game week 30, which is 11:30 on Saturday, the game week 31, which is Friday night at 7 p.m, because, of course, that was going to be Spurs-West Ham, they will remain at scheduled times. And this is the key thing here. Any activity that managers undertake ahead of each deadline will apply to that game week.
Okay.
Which leads us on to transfers, which is the big one. So what they have told us is that for game week 0, we all score 0 points unless we have taken hits. So for any managers who take points hits for transfers, their game week score will reflect the points they lost. It's confirmation of the fact that hits prior to the deadline can't be reversed. So if you took a -4 on Tuesday, your score for game week 30 is -4. If you didn't take any at all, it's 0. If you took a -8, it's -8, and so on and so forth. So basically, what that is going to look like is it means anyone who didn't take any hits for game week 30 is probably going to be getting a green arrow for game week 30, but getting 0 points.
Okay.
So that's the immediate kind of situation.
So I just want to get this, just to clarify this. Essentially, as it stands at the moment, the game will resume game week 32. That is the next playable game week for us. But in the meantime, game weeks 30 and 31 deadlines will be in place.
That is correct. So what it means is, it means you can still make transfers. So this is the one thing that perhaps to make people aware of is, let's kind of go for a case study. We'll touch briefly on my team. So I've got Ender Stevens in my team right now, who's red flagged for game week 30 because he was supposedly out for a couple of weeks with, I think, what was described as a calf problem. I'm not going to sell him now because obviously his calf problem could be better by the time game week 32 rolls around. So I'm going to roll my transfer this week, which means going into 31, I will have 2 free transfers. There's no games in that game week, but I can still make transfers. And what I will then do probably is I might use one of those to avoid wasting it. And then or you could just leave it and you'd still have 2 free transfers. Because, is it a wasted transfer if there's no games on?
We don't know who's going to be fit, do we? We don't know who's going to be available in game week 32 should it transpire in the beginning of April. Okay, let's just on that thing, just before we look at the chips and the wildcard, for example, and the changes and the possible implications there. So, for example, my team at the moment, I have 2 free transfers. So, essentially, does everyone have 2 free transfers ahead of game week 32? So, in essence, should I use one of my transfers before tomorrow, before Saturday, and I'd still go into game week 32 with 2 free transfers, presumably? Would that be right?
I think so. It is very uncharted territory. That's just my sort of interpretation from what we're seeing from this particular information. I'm personally not going to use any of my transfers before the deadline because I just don't see the point in using it. But
No.
theoretically, I guess you could. I mean, I suppose the thing is, we all like to make our transfers with information, don't we? So
Yeah.
arguably, we don't really know, because we don't know when it's coming back.
Yeah.
Then maybe just hold off. But from what I can see, it does just look like that we're basically all going to have 2 free transfers for when it comes back.
Okay.
Arguably a good thing. If there's been so much uncertainty up until that point, having 2 free transfers, everybody having 2 free transfers when we come back is probably, I can't argue with that. I think that could be quite helpful for people.
There is a bit of fantasy management for people to do. So people who've seen playing fantasy Premier League and thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to leave it for a little while. I've now got a decision actually. For example, I was going to get rid of Danny Ings for Calvert-Lewin. I might as well make that move. If I think that Calvert-Lewin is going to be better than Danny Ings in a month's time. Because I'm still going to go in with 2 free transfers. I don't know. Anyway, lots of teams are different. Everyone's team's different. They've all got their own personal questions for these things. Let's move on to something a bit broader as well around chips and wildcard as well. What have the FPL been saying about the impact of this proposed postponement on wildcard and the other chips?
Yes, so let's move on to chips then. So, I mean, again, I'm just going to read directly from their press release. So they are saying that managers must be aware that any transfers made, as we've already stated, or wildcards or chips played in a game week where all the fixtures are postponed, these will not be reinstated. Please note that managers can cancel a triple captain or a bench boost chip they have played ahead of a game week deadline. However, this does not apply to transfers they have made or wildcards and free hit chips that have been played. So the discrepancy between chips here is that a bench boost and a triple captain are of course cancelable because you aren't making any transfers. No. Whereas a wild card and a free hit chip are both chips based around transfers. And the overriding theme here is that any transfers made this week, even before the coronavirus suspension, can't be reversed. That also pertains to a wild card and a free hit. So if you've played those, then those chips aren't coming back. So that's what the Premier League are going with on this.
Well, I see that as quite simple because and you phrased that really well there. Is that the chips are different. The bench boost and the triple captain are you're not making the transfers. Anything that involves transfers suddenly that's not reversible as well. So if you've used your wild cards this week, you had it poised there and your free hit. Well, that's still in play. You can't reverse that for this week, so that will happen. I guess what they do is you just sort of try and assemble the best team you can for that, really, because we don't know who's going to be fit and available for 32. But I guess you start looking at 32 and the fixtures from there, because we don't know where 30 and 31 are going to end up. What number they're going to end up. Presumably, possibly double game weeks, triple game weeks along the way. We don't know. That's speculating. Head to head and the cups as well. Let's not forget them. What does the postponements mean for them?
Yeah, so we've got stuff on that as well. So basically, in head-to-head league matches, if neither manager made transfers incurring points deductions that game week, then the matches will be drawn and managers will each earn 1 point. So it'll be 0-0. If one of them took a -4 and one of them took a -8, the person who took the -4 in that scenario would get the win. And then it's the same for the cup largely. So the FPL Cup, which I believe has 256 people left in it, if both managers incurred no points hits through transfers, the scores will be 0, and the cup match will be decided by a virtual coin toss. But like the league matches, if you're in a cup if you're in a cup tie and you took a -4 and your opponent took a -8, you win. If you took a -8 and your opponent took a -4, you lose. So it looks as if the FBL Cup schedule is not is being left as is in response to that from the Premier League's perspective.
Okay, this is this is, as you said, it's uncharted territory. One thing we do know that if games are resumed, we know that 30 and 31 are there. So we're essentially resuming from 32, and we're going to have 2 free transfers. I can't have 3 or 4. I wish I could, but I can't. But that would be amazing bending of the rules just for me. I can understand FPL not doing that. But one thing I wanted to do was just have a look at game week 32 fixtures, really. So that's what we're heading for now, really, in terms of in terms of strategy, we'll be looking at that. So one of the things, game week 31 was a blank game week. Yourself, I believe, were quite well. You had quite a few players there, and you could use transfers to field a good team out there. For myself, I had absolutely no one. So I was all set to free hit in game week 31. Looks like I'll be keeping that chip now. And because I'm going straight into game week 32 with, in theory, a whole bunch of lovely players. No blank game week for me. Is that right? Have I got that right?
It is confusing, isn't it? It is obviously a complete and utter shift in how FPL is going to work. Because I was planning to not use the free hit in game week 31, so I'd been building a squad quietly sort of on the down low that would be ready for that. I didn't get very far. I only got to 6 players, so I didn't do the best job. But of course, it's kind of gone out the window now, and we can only kind of carry on as things stand. So we can only sort of plan forward based on what we know. And at this point, what we are being told is the Premier League comes back for game week 32. And if that's the case, then, I'm probably going to be looking to, roll that free transfer this week, which is actually quite nice to do. I mean, the amount of times I've been forced into using it, to not have to use it for a change is quite refreshing. So, I'll be doing that. I'll be having a look at these particular fixtures. But, of course, it is just worth clarifying that the Premier League, to come back to the statement, because really we have to be completely led by that statement. They've also explained that with the postponements of fixtures. So, for example, it's the Premier League's intention to reschedule postponed fixtures when it's safe to do so, which is largely what they said earlier. Points scored in these fixtures will apply to the game week in which the fixtures are played in. So that's their way of saying that if all of the game week 30 matches were played in 32, let's say they were all set at midweeks, then game week 32 would be a double. That's an arbitrary example. Or game week 30, say they were put into 36, then that would be a double. The points that are scored in those matches are not applicable to game week 30 and 31. But then the crucial thing again is that in this fast-moving environment, the Premier League will provide further updates when appropriate. These are exceptional circumstances, and we appreciate the understanding of FPL managers while the situation evolves, because that is really just the undercurrent throughout this whole thing, is that things are constantly changing. We are being told sort of from a national government level that we can expect coronavirus to spread with increased kind of speed. The peak is potentially not now, and it is later. So there is, of course, always the possibility that when we get to April 4th, the Premier League suspend for a further period. But we don't really have any precedent for that, because the leagues around the rest of Europe, let's say La Liga, Serie A, all of those leagues, they haven't reached that point yet.
No.
So we may end up getting an indication of what the Premier League do for game week 32 when we see what happens at the end of the 2-week period for Spain and Italy and a few other countries. So we can sort of plan for 32, but at the same time, at the back of our mind, we have to be very open to the possibility that those fixtures will also be postponed, and game week 32 will be another game when we get 0 points. Obviously, managers are probably wondering what will happen with the game weeks after that, because let's say, again, the hypothetical example, let's say we get to 35 and 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35 all have been postponed. It kind of gets to the point, it might get to the point where that is too many fixtures to fit into 38, because if everybody's got a quintuple game week, that's just madness. So the key really is to just keep an eye on the situation. The Premier League themselves are admitting that that there may be further updates that change the game week kind of like schedules. I don't know, but the key really is to just stay tuned to them, and when we find out, you'll find out too.
So it looks like I may waste a transfer in that case, because it's literally no point me whether I go in with I'm going to go into game week 32 or beyond, wherever it is, with 2 free transfers. There's no point me making a transfer for someone with a good fixture in game week 32. It might not take place, and by then it may be a double game week. Someone might be better. I wouldn't know. And I'll earn one of the rare achievements, which is obviously unusual circumstances, where someone gets to actually waste a transfer. And I think I may indeed do that. I think that's the best thing. I think that's a good advice there that you give them, really, is that you've got to be aware of the situation. Fantasy Football Scout on social media and in articles, and obviously in any videos and podcasts we do, it's going to keep everyone up to date on what is happening. As soon as we get information, as soon as we see what's on the site, we'll have a look at it, we'll analyse it, and we'll come out and we'll get that information to people. And that's key, really. It's constantly changing. But this is how much it's changing. We were talking at 12 o'clock, and now we're talking at 4 o'clock, 4:15, and already the situation has changed. Already we've got lots to talk about here. But for now, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to add before we, sound off for now, and then look ahead to further updates in the future? Yeah, anything else to add?
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll just I'll just reiterate what we said in the video earlier today for anyone who didn't see it, is that obviously Fantasy Football Scout content is going to be kind of slowing down. For the next few days, we're going to be focusing mainly on news rather than strategy. We've touched on a bit on it in this video, but as we sort of said, there's not really that much we can plan for. So yeah, things are going to slow down to a certain extent. We might have some members articles and more strategy based pieces once the dust has settled, because we don't want to look like we're taking this too seriously, when obviously, of course, we are very concerned about the wider implications of coronavirus on kind of everyday life for everybody.
Yes.
Which leads me, of course, onto what we are making sure we mention on every piece of content, just to make sure that we are doing our civic duty, which is just to remind people the best thing to do if you think you or someone you know may have coronavirus. So we're including that in all our articles and all our videos as well. Advice specifically from the NHS website: if you think you might have it or someone you know might have it, stay at home and avoid close contact with other people. Do not go to a GP, surgery, pharmacy or hospital. Use the NHS 111 online coronavirus service to find out what to do next. And obviously, of course, that applies to people in the UK. I should have clarified earlier. But yeah, so stay safe, everybody. I hope everyone is fit and well and ready to carry on with FPL when FPL is ready to carry on with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, David. Thanks for the update there. Go on Fantasy Football Scout now and have a look at the article that you've just written about that. So that outlines a lot of what we talked about there. Lots of people chatting already in the forum about what the implications are for their team. But for now, David, until next time, next update, thanks so much for your time, and good luck for the game week whenever it is.
Yeah, and to you as well, Joe.